Hi there folks, welcome back to VHS Crazy. On today's roster, we got the classic 90s cult classic western, Tombstone. So buckle up tight, because it's about to get positively electric in here.
Hello? Popcorn delivery?
Put a little weekend in your week. Rent a video.
I would say the 90s was the best decade for westerns after the 70s. During the 80s, there weren't too many good westerns. In the 70s, you had the rise of spaghetti westerns, which are the best kind of westerns. Sergio Leone, and you got such fine westerns as, Once Upon a Time in the West, and well, I suppose that's kind of late 60s. And then, of course, you have things like The Wild Bunch in 1969. Just good stuff all around. You know, westerns that really critique the genre. And TV westerns, I can't flip and stand. I find TV westerns to be some of the most boring drivel ever spewed. Bonanza, Gunsmoke, The Big Valley, The Rifleman, they all bore me to tears, because the fact of the matter is, when you make episode after episode with the same characters in the same setting, it kind of seems like you're kind of obsessed with that setting, and that's unhealthy. Now, there's nothing wrong with doing a nice little 2-hour jaunt into the American West. It's a nice setting. In moderation, you don't need 50 hours of the shit, you know. It's not that amazing. It's just the American West. There were men, there were horses, there were sand. Can you do a lot of things with the setting? Sure. Can you make an entire TV show off it? No, you can't make an entire TV show off the Western idea. But there's some really good movie westerns I enjoy. I like Sergio Leone. I like The Magnificent Seven. I like, there's a lot. And this has to be one of them. Tombstone, with Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer. On the front cover it says one of the year's 10 best. I was surprised to learn this film is a cult classic and didn't get watched enough. I think this would be one of the highest grossing films of the year it came out, 1993. Just because, I mean, it's got Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer, two of the biggest stars of the 90s. Like, it's a recipe for success. Now, of course, my first exposure to the tale of the Earp brothers and the gunfight at the OK Corral was the episode of Star Trek where they get transported back to Tombstone, Arizona, but it's an illusion, and everyone in the town is fake, and they're the good guys, and they're the Clantons, and the Earps are the bad guys, which makes zero sense. And all the townspeople are like, they say to Captain Kirk, like, hey, we're counting on you to get rid of the Earps for us. And it's like, why you want to get rid of the Earps? They're the good guys. So that makes just zero sense right off the bat. In this one, the Earp Bros are the good guys, as it should be. And, I don't know, like I said, there was a big resurgence of Western popularity in the 90s. For instance, the Maverick remake with Mel Gibson. I might talk about that sometime. It's an interesting movie. But this has Kurt Russell as famous lawman Wyatt Earp. Now, of course, this movie was kind of overshadowed by the film that came out the year after with Kevin Costner and Gene Hackman called Wyatt Earp, which I guess presents a more historically accurate rendition of events as they happened. Don't go for that. Go for this one. This one is an action-packed romp. This is some swashbuckling, fun Western fare right here. Is this the most provocative Western ever made? Nah. But is it like, is it fun and cool and, you know, just a jam-packed, fun shoot 'em up, yeah. If you like action, if you like fun westerns, then watch this. This was, to the best of my knowledge, the first real, high-budget, good rendition of The Legend of Wyatt Earp and his pals, Doc Holliday, and his bros, Morgan and Virgil. Of course, I hear a lot about the Earp bros getting bad-mouthed by morons who weren't there, saying like, oh no, the Earp brothers were pimps. They weren't good guys. They were frickin' pimps.
Goddamn pimps.
It's like, I don't care if they're prostitute purveyors, so long as they're not like evangelical Christians or something. I mean, the West was progressive mainly because it had so many prostitutes. I don't really buy into all that. Maybe they bought a few prostitutes one time or something. They were guys alone in the frontier, but settle down. They frickin' fought the Clantons and won. It's pretty epic, And then some guys would be like, oh, the Clantons were good guys. They were the real rebels to society or whatever. It's like, no, they were frickin' rapists and murderers and thieves. And, don't celebrate that type of criminal. They were scumbags. I like the Earp bros. I side with the Earp bros. I don't know who doesn't. I guess some kind of bizarre historical revisionist might not, but there are plenty of good revisionist westerns out there. This isn't a revisionist western. This is just a straightforward, fun western. And if you're into revisionist westerns, then all the power to you. That's a nice genre in its own right. But this isn't that. And, obviously don't worship like General Custer, but the Earp bros, they were probably pretty nice guys in real life. I'm not gonna shit on the Earp bros. They were probably okay people. Maybe they weren't. There's a 10% chance they were freaking monsters with, oh shit, they were so horrible and shit. Yeah. I don't really buy that. They seem like okay guys, or otherwise they wouldn't have been such big celebrities back in the day. So of course, this film has got Kurt Russell. I like Kurt Russell in pretty much everything he's in. He's wholesome. That's his defining characteristic. He's wholesome in Overboard. He's wholesome in this. He's wholesome in The Thing. He's wholesome as Snake Plissken from Escape from New York. He's just a wholesome fella. Now, keep in mind, in Overboard, he plays this trash-talking Oregon redneck who lies and manipulates a female amnesiac. So to play that role and still be wholesome, you gotta be pretty gosh darn wholesome. And Kurt Russell has got so much charm. Back in the day, he was a hunk. Every woman was like, man, oh man, I'd like to get my hands on Kurt Russell. His hot dreamboat. And, I can definitely see the appeal here. He's a big star, and while he doesn't completely disappear into the performance of Wyatt Earp, you can always tell it's Kurt Russell. I don't think there's a single Kurt Russell role where you can't tell he's Kurt Russell. His mustache is on point, as is his hat, and all the clothes and set pieces are really good. They really create a nice, authentic Western vibe. And this movie strikes a nice balance between historical accuracy and making things up for dramatic purposes. And that's fine, so long as, the main story is pretty true to form. I think they did a decent amount of research for this movie. Not as much as a full-on biopic, but this isn't a biopic. It's a fun action western. Doc Holliday, Val Kilmer, is also really good in this. He is a fun character. I think he's probably the best Doc Holliday for sure, without a doubt. I like Val Kilmer in everything he's in except Batman 3. All that said, what sets Tombstone apart from other westerns for me is the very nice setup. Now some would point out that there's not much payoff, and that's kind of true. There is no climax to the film. Well, there's sort of a climax to the film. The shootout at the OK Corral and everything that happens after it is just kind of filler and, you know, the end, and they all live happily ever after. But the setup is what makes this movie for me. It opens up with the Clantons shooting up a Mexican wedding and shooting the groom and stuff, and it's just, you know, very good at making the Clantons these miserable bastards who you want to see get their comeuppance. So that's really nice. It establishes the antagonist and makes the viewer think, oh, these guys are scumbags. I want to see the Earp bros whoop their ass at the OK Corral. And boy, oh boy, does this movie deliver on that. Another thing that could be said is that Morgan, the most underrated Earp bro, is kind of underdeveloped in this. The guy who plays him isn't very famous. I think it's, I guess Bill Paxton. I don't know, I'm just going off the case here. But he could have used a few more scenes of development. I feel like Virgil is developed okay, but Morgan is just kind of, you know, apart from his death scene, I feel like, oh, spoiler alert, I feel like he's not very fleshed out, as it were. You know, Morgan is the most underrated Earp bro, so it'd be nice to see him get a little more screen time here. But, you know, that is okay. I feel like most of the focus is put on these two up front here, Wyatt and Doc, and not enough on Vert or Morg, you know? I feel like if they're all four going to be on the cover, they should have equal screen time. Actually, I guess Doc and Wyatt are kind of in front, so there's kind of that. But yeah, Morgan doesn't get enough, you know, justice for Morg, I guess. Well, the props and set pieces are really nice. I think it should be said that with a movie western, you can really take care of all the props and set, and it'll look way better than a TV western, because with the TV western, you gotta keep the same fake ranch or fake front town going for, what, like freaking 60 episodes, and by the end of it all, it looks very fake, believe me. But Tombstone looks good. It really recreates the old western atmosphere. You got some very nice bar scenes, you got some very nice, there's a bit where they're in a theater. The theater scene is really nice and very period accurate. I like that, you know, I like the attention to detail in some of the sets and costumes, and they really went all out for this. Another thing I believe should be said is that there's a sort of homosexual character who plays this, you know, he does this really gay play in the theater, like Shakespeare or something, and that's nice to see, some nice gay representation in the Old West. There were a lot of gay guys back then. It's nice to see, you know, an early representation of the gay crowd in the Wild West, because they were there, believe it or not. Gay fellows have always been around, believe it or not. I think this movie does a really good job with the gay character. And when he dies, you really feel sad, because, you know, he's Josie Earp's pal, and, you know, he's nice to the Earp bros, and, you know, you just feel pretty let down. The actress who plays Josie Earp is really good in this. I really bought her performance. And of course you have Wyatt's conflict between his old wife, Maddie, who's this grotesque old morphine addict, and his new wife, Josie, who's this beautiful, progressive woman. And, you know, it's just very nice when him and Josie get together. And it's nice to see a film that celebrates if a guy wants to have a divorce and another woman. And it's not really mean to Maddie. It just says, you know, she was a morphine addict and she needed to rest. And she's just phased out of the movie altogether at some point. But the idea is that Wyatt feels a lot less held down by Josie, who's just a very nice wife. And I don't know. I feel kind of bad for Maddie, I will admit. But, you know, overall, if the relationship doesn't work out, Wyatt wants to have a divorce, then so be it, you know? This movie challenges a lot of the ideas of the time, you know? It's very wholesome. It's very, it's not revisionist. I wouldn't say that, but it is definitely a 90s Western with a lot of more 90s ideas. That's not to say it doesn't paint the era in an accurate way. Is this film very accurate as far as race relations go? It's established very early on that prior to the arrival of the Earp Bros, and I don't know how historically accurate this is, Tombstone's law enforcement division was incompetent. You got the sheriff, who's this big racist, and at the beginning he says he's a member of the Anti-Chinese League, whatever in the heck that is. Now, you know, he's established as a racist very early on, obviously. And while the Earp Bros never directly say, hey, don't be a member of the Anti-Chinese League, it is made very clear very early on that this guy needs to go and he's not equipped to protect the town. And the other member of the law enforcement division is this aging old marshal who gets shot because he's so gosh darn incompetent. I think this movie does a very good job of establishing early on that the Earp Bros are there to take back the town and set things right. And they really do. They really clean up the bad guys, and, you know, Earp's reason for chasing them down seems very justified. You know, they killed his brother, so he's PO'd.
The Cowboys are finished, you understand me? I see a red sash, I kill a man wearing it.
It's a very nice origin story for him. And I like the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse metaphor. That's kind of smart, you know. That, you know, they're bringing the justice. Justice is coming is the tagline of this movie. And man, oh man, I wouldn't want to be a Clanton and be caught out with these four coming towards me at the OK Corral. Let me tell you. You know, I don't support. I don't like modern law enforcement, obviously. But back then, it was a frickin' anarchy, you know? Everyone was shooting guns and murdering each other and stealing each other's cattle, and there were very few people in place to say, nah, don't do that. The Wild West was a kind of yucky environment, believe it or not, so someone had to come in and say, look, you know, you gotta follow some laws. And there's a scene where they put a gun regulation in place. And, you know, that's very relevant today, of course. And Virgil says, we're not saying you can't have a gun. We're not even saying you can't carry a gun. You just can't carry a gun in town. And I think that's a very nice scene about gun control and how guns are dangerous if you have too many of them and if you carry yours around all the time and shoot it off like some sort of insane deranged lunatic, which all the Clantons are portrayed as being. Irresponsible, crazy lunatics. That's very nice. I like the characterization. They're very good villains. They're very unlikable. In contrast to the Earp Bros, who are here to deliver justice. Is this movie biased? Sure, maybe. But were the Earp Bros the bad guys? I have serious doubts about that stance. I think the Earps were pretty okay guys. Like, I'm not gonna hate on the Earps all day. Like, they were probably okay fellas, you know? Only a moron would claim that the Clantons were the good guys. Oh, they were just trying to have fun. Yeah, if your fun involves killing people, too much fun. Take your guns away. But yeah, I mean, in the Old West, you needed some lawmen to say what was okay and what wasn't okay, because it really was a crazy, loose society with very few rules. Was it exactly as crazy as movies make it out to be? No, it was pretty boring, in all honesty. You wouldn't see a fight at the OK Corral every single day. You know, there wasn't frickin' gunshots every single day, but it was a chaotic and turbulent period in America's history, hence its popular appeal. In 2018, a book was released with some behind-the-scenes shots, some backstory. I think that'd be interesting to see. I've got a collection of old lithographs, and there are plenty of, you know, all the Earp bros and Josie Earp, and there's some very nice photographs in there. There are a few of the bandits with the coins over their eyes, which is how they buried them back in those days. I guess it was symbolic or something, I don't know. But there's a shot in here with the bandits, and they're being buried with their coins over their eyes. And one of the shots looks just like a photograph, like a real picture of a bandit with a coin over his eyes. So that's really nice. And again, I'd say Val Kilmer really becomes Doc Holliday. He really takes the role seriously. Like I said, Kurt Russell is a little more recognizable. You can really tell it's Kurt Russell behind the mustache, but he's a good Wyatt Earp, all things considered. You feel that, you know, he's there to be the wholesome hero and save the day, and it happens. But like, I totally buy Doc Holliday in here. And he's just such a handsome rogue. And I think the contrast that's set up very early on, we first see the Earp bros with their wives, you know, very, very straightforward. And they're not like conservative or anything. They're just, you know, very respectable. And then we cut away to Doc Holliday, and he just has a prostitute with him, and it's just very good at setting up, you know, the differences between the Earp bros and Doc, who's like this freaking wacky bastard with just so many crazy fun quirks and stuff. And man, he must have been a fun guy. I understand why he's most people's favorite, you know.
There. Now we can be friends again.
The scene where he twirls the cup is just like classic. It turns so many tropes on its head, you know. That he's just this witty little dentist bastard. Like, gosh darn, if that's how dentists were back in the Old West, like, sign me up. This guy knew how to do a root canal and be funny. Like, heck yeah. Like, most dentists don't have that kind of sense of humor anymore. I like Doc Holliday. Val Kilmer really brings the character to life here. This movie isn't very challenging. There's nothing about, you know, Native Americans or slaves or Hispanics in here, but, you know, I really don't think those are very relevant to the story of Tombstone, Arizona. Maybe there were some Native Americans involved or something. I don't know, maybe. There have been in recent years, a lot of research into stories on black cowboys and Hispanic cowboys, of which there were a whole lot. I recall one story about this Hispanic sheriff here in Colorado who, I guess he had a feud with some other sheriffs in some neighboring counties, so they tried shooting him, and he was holed up in this house, and they tried shooting him, and he just survived. And that's pretty crazy. It's a pretty interesting story. I think his name was like something Vaca or something, but you know, I do think the Western genre could definitely benefit from some more black cowpoke stories, or just minority tales overall, because those don't get told enough, you know. Some Lil Nas X, you know, that's you know, there were a lot of black cowboys back in the Old West, because they'd just been emancipated. Everyone was going over to the Old West, you know. Some went up to New York, that's true, you know, the Great Migration, all that. But some did go out west and try to start new life cattle ranching, and you know, I think there should be more westerns about that. But you know, this just doesn't happen to be that exact western. It's an okay western overall. You know, it's not about racism or anything. It's just about some good guys cleaning up some bad guys, and at the end of the day, it's a solid 2 hours worth of entertainment. This is a fun western. This is a western that knows how to pack the punches and keep the action going for as long as possible. And not only that, but the characters are really good too. The script is really tight. Some people complained no climax. I think the climax is the OK Corral, like I said. There is one thing about Doc Holliday dying in the sanitarium in Colorado, which is true. And that's one of the things anyone always points to when they say, oh, Colorado has celebrities. Doc Holliday was once. Like, no, he was in Colorado once. That doesn't mean he's a Colorado celebrity. The same way Hunter S. Thompson being in Colorado a few times doesn't make him a Colorado celebrity. Like, who are you kidding? Doc Holliday, of course, was in Glenwood Springs, and he died there. He just like went in one bar, had one drink, went to the sanitarium, passed out, and died. And that's not much of a legacy. I think Arizona had all the cool gunfights and all the cool shizzle. You can go to the OK Corral today and step where Wyatt Earp stepped, and you know, step where Doc Holliday stepped, and that's so great. But you know, to think that the only legacy Colorado has is just that Doc Holliday died here and his grave is up there somewhere is pretty morbid. And I don't like thinking about that because I like Doc Holliday. He sounds like he was a pretty snazzy guy, you know, so I don't really like that. The back cover says, a sizzling, star-studded cast brings to life the legendary battle to deliver justice to Tombstone. Kurt Russell turns in a gripping performance as U.S. Marshal Wyatt Earp, and Val Kilmer ignites the screen as the outrageous Doc Holliday. Together, they team up to bring law to the lawless in a notorious showdown with ruthless outlaws at the OK Corral. The all-star ensemble also includes Sam Elliott, Bill Paxton, Dana Delaney, Jason Priestley, Michael Bang, and longtime Hollywood favorite Charlton Heston. Get ready for an explosive, action-packed adventure the Wild West would never forget. And I never even noticed Charlton Heston in here. I guess he was probably the old marshal, because I mean he was pushing. You know, he was pretty old by this point already. So you know, I don't know, but I'm gonna look it up after this review. I didn't even notice him. Like I looked at the back cover and I read, oh, Charlton Heston, and then I watched the movie and I completely forgot to look for him and figure out who he was. So as far as Virgil goes, you know, being the oldest Earp bro, and then Morgan being the youngest, Virg was a lot fatter in real life. So I feel that's kind of historically accurate. Like Kurt Russell, I totally buy as Wyatt Earp, but Virgil Earp was pretty chunky. Like I look at an old picture of Verge, and he's definitely on the plus side, you know. And Sam Elliott is pretty, you know, skin and bones. Like he's pretty thin. So I'd say that was kind of inaccurate. They should have. I don't know. I feel like Sam Elliott doesn't really add much. He's just there because he's famous, and you know, attention to detail should be there. If they had to go with Sam Elliott, I'd probably suggest like adding a few, you know, molding some clay onto his face or something to make him look a little bigger, you know, because like I look at the real picture Virgil Earp, and it's like, yeah, he was a pretty big guy, all things considered. At least in the picture. Maybe that's taken during his older years. I don't know, because he did survive the fight and move out to California, and so maybe that's when the picture was taken. Maybe during the fight he was kind of skinny. I don't know. But Wyatt and Doc, I do buy for the most part. And Morgan, being a relative unknown, I absolutely buy, because I just don't know if Bill Paxton, if that's him. I just don't know. But yeah, I do find it kind of odd that they have these like three of the bunch being these big stars, and then the fourth is just Bill Paxton. He's just Morgan. That's not to say his performance isn't good. He does a good job with what he's given. But like I said, Morgan could really use some character development, building up. I don't feel like he has enough punch in this movie. But yeah, it's a good movie. Would I recommend it? Yeah, I would definitely recommend this one. Now, this is definitely one of the best retellings of a historical event in the Wild West. Not because it's historically accurate, but just because it takes a lot of liberties with what actually happened and kind of has the viewer decide, what happened, what didn't happen, what are the screenwriters making up, and what actually happened. And that's kind of the fun of it. That's what makes a Wild West legend like Wyatt Earp or Doc Holliday, that's what makes them appealing, the mystique, the glamour, the glitz, And this movie does a really good job of keeping the viewer in the dark as to what actually happened and what's made up. And that's very refreshing to see. And I'm surprised this movie is it's like a cult classic. I wouldn't even think this is a cult classic. By all measures, this should have been an absolute financial success. Like, it is in every way a recipe for fun. I guess maybe, it was a nihilistic period and a lot of people didn't like it because it wasn't challenging enough. It wasn't, the Wild Bunch. It wasn't Sergio, it was just this fun gallivanting romp. And, at that point, the 90s, people were starting to think, the Wild West was actually pretty gosh darn racist. So maybe this movie, where there's really no mention of racism, was pretty offensive to some people. The 90s were when people first started questioning the outdated legends of the West and how great everyone was and how great all the people were. Now, of course, as with any historical period, the Wild West was complex. And there were some people who were absolute filth, absolute scum. But there were other guys who were just in it, and they weren't racist. So that should be kept in mind. With every period in American history, you got the good guys, you got the stupid heads, It is what it is. You're gonna have some good apples, you're gonna have some bad apples. That's how it is. I think this movie does a pretty good job of portraying the Earps, as complex guys. They have a lot of conflict, they have a lot of drama. I really like the scenes where Wyatt Earp is like, hey, I really don't want to bother with all this. Let's just make some money.
Get it, Earp. Come on, get some fresh air.
Because Wyatt is commonly portrayed as like the most justice-minded brother. So to see him just like, let's make some money, I don't want to bother with these Clanton guys, is very... It's very, it hadn't been done before, and I think that's really nice. And then Virgil is like, come on, we gotta take care of these Klan guys. And Wyatt's like, alright, we'll take care of these Klan guys. It's not subversive exactly, but it definitely, repaints the character a little, makes him a little more bitter at the world, a little more angry. Is this the best Western ever? No, Sergio Leone's stuff is better. Dollars Trilogy obviously being my, top pick, you know. Obviously, spaghetti westerns are good. But this is one of the best westerns of the 90s. It was, I'd say, the last good decade for westerns. It was the last decade where anyone really cared about the genre. And as far as I'm concerned, this is a good send-off to the genre. This is a good, solid, you know, bye. You were fun while you lasted. We had a lot of crazy romps with you, westerns, but at the end of the day, you just can't hold the attention of the modern audience like you used to. But I'd say out of all the stories out there worth telling, Showdown at the OK Corral is one that definitely should have been told a long time before this, and it probably was in silent movie form or something. But there needed to be a Wyatt Earp tale. Like, come on, you know, he's the most well-known, and his, you know, this image is iconic. This image was iconic before the movie was even made. How there wasn't a Wyatt Earp movie before this, there probably was. It was probably low-budget trash and painted Wyatt Earp as this flawless, goody two-shoes who frickin' was the, oh, he's Wyatt Earp. And he was probably as clean and wholesome as Marshall Matt Dillon on frickin' Gunsmoke. But yeah, this is a nice, realistic western. It's not realistic per se. There are some very cartoony moments where you feel like, you know, you're watching a dramatization. I feel the reason Morgan is less well remembered than the other in the bunch is because he was, you know, he was shot right after the fight. From what I can tell, that's historically accurate. But, you know, he survived the fight, which is all that really should matter in qualifying him as a Wild West legend. You know, he was probably a pretty, you know, important gunslinger himself, and, you know, I think he just gets kind of short end of the stick. Just throwing that out there. Who do I recommend Tombstone to? Well, I give it 4 stars. It's not a 5-star movie. It's not crazy provocative or, you know, insanely good. But it definitely deserved better than it got. I can't imagine this movie doing poorly at the box office with such mass appeal, you know. But like I said, if revisionist westerns are more your thing, or spaghetti westerns, because, you know, they are better. If those are your thing, then you probably won't like this. But if you like westerns, this is, I would say, the last really wholesome, you know, swashbuckling western adventure. There wasn't really another, you know, solid ensemble, you know, crazy western fun fest after this. This was kind of the later years of the genre. Even though the 90s had some, you know, good westerns, this was the last, like, serious western, crazy, you know, just all-out extravaganza. But yeah, I remember watching this as a youth. I enjoyed it. It's a nice movie. It's got a lot of charm, a lot of wholesomeness to it, and it's nice to see the Earp Bros brought to life. It's nice to see any siblings in film. You know, they got such wacky family quarrels, and, you know, it's just nice. You know, that's why the Earp Bros have persisted as a nice collective of guys. You know, because it's very rare to see, you know, some brothers as tight-knit as that, and it's very nice to see some siblings working together to accomplish a single goal, along with their wacky pal Doc Holliday. Like I said, Val Kilmer is definitely at his peak in this. This is some good Val Kilmer right here. He knows how to be the wacky bastard who's Doc Holliday, with all the quips and one-liners, and, you know, just fun times. So if you're into westerns, this is the movie for you. Like I said, I don't prefer all westerns. Some of them are just dirt awful, but it is a pretty good western. I enjoyed it. It was fun. You know, if westerns aren't your bag, then this isn't the movie for you. But if they are your bag, then yeah, this is definitely the movie for you. It's a good fun time. And man, oh man, is this cover epic. Wow. So that said, this has been yet another installment of VHS Crazy. We're 5 movies deep at this point. I plan on just keeping on going. So if you'd like to support these reviews, then write to Nicholas Cicada, 1424 Columbine Street, number 1, Denver, Colorado 80206, and buy some Nicholas comics. That's how I make my bread and butter. And I got some fresh comics out on the way. I haven't been able to work on them much because I'm so busy putting these reviews together. But man, oh man, am I having a fun time blasting through 47 iconic Hollywood movies on VHS. So that said, I guess I'll see you in the next one. And man, oh man, this is a gosh darn good movie right here. It's not the best, but it's good.